Hey guys, Miss B. Hanley here, and today I wanted to talk to you about some different poetic forms. There are a whole bunch of different poetic forms, but today we're only going to be taking a look at three. We're going to be looking at concrete poetry, we're also going to be taking a look at the English sonnet, and haikus. Concrete poetry is poetry in which the meaning of the poem is partially or wholly conveyed through the visual way that the words are represented in the poem. Poets usually write concrete poetry to represent a visual medium as well as a linguistic one. It's usually meant to help the reader make a connection between the image that the poem is actually creating and the words it's meant to describe. There are a couple of famous examples of these, most notably Easter Wings by George Herbert and The Mouse's Tale by Lewis Carroll. Both of these poems have the words set up in a way to represent what the poem is actually about. For example, Easter Wings, the words are set up in a way to look like angels' wings. In The Mouse's Tale, the words follow a pattern of what would look like essentially a mouse's tail. Next up is English sonnet. It's also known sometimes as the Elizabethan sonnet or the Shakespearean sonnet because of the time period that it became popularized. An English sonnet, a sonnet that has been used much by Shakespeare, is written in iambic pentameter and contains 3 quatrains and a couplet. A quatrain are 4 rhyming lines that usually follow in the pattern of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and then lastly, the couplet is 2 rhyming lines that follow the rhyme scheme of G, G. The English sonnet became popularized during the Elizabethan era when the Queen Elizabeth ruled in England, made popular by William Shakespeare, who wrote sonnets for wealthy or royal patrons who would pay him to basically hear how amazing and wonderful they were. The English sonnet was considered the highest form of literature during the Elizabethan era, which is why it was so popular back then. It's ironic today that what Shakespeare is most known for is not his sonnets, but instead his plays, which were actually seen as a lower form of art back in Elizabethan times. The English sonnet actually derives from an older poetic form known as the Italian sonnet or the Petrarchan sonnet. This type of sonnet actually comes from the Italian Renaissance and follows a little bit of a different meter and pattern. The Elizabethan sonnet takes a lot of these ideas and transforms them into a new type of form. The word sonnet actually comes from the Italian word sonetto, which means a little sound or song. English sonnets usually carry the theme of love, which makes sense because the poets who wrote them back in Elizabethan times were writing them to get paid by wealthy royals who were basically paying them to be told how beautiful and wonderful they were. The last type of poetic form that I'll be talking about today is a haiku. A haiku is a traditional Japanese poetic form, which follows a very specific format. Haikus are 3 lines and consist of 17 syllables total, with the first line being 5 syllables, the second line being 7, and the last line being 5 syllables again. In a traditional Japanese haiku, the lines very rarely rhyme. Haikus normally discuss the topic of nature or seasons, but the most traditional idea behind a haiku is this idea of cutting or kuru, which means that you're separating 2 different ideas or concepts through the same poem. Most often, we see haikus written in groups. The traditional Japanese poets that wrote them would write them usually together to represent a larger idea. So those are the 3 poetic forms that we're actually going to be discussing this week in class. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for this channel about something that I should cover or something I should start talking about, please leave it in the comments. I'm really open to suggestions and I want to hear your guys' feedback and thoughts. So please let me know if you can. So I will see you in class. Have a great day.